The diesel engine of my rig rumbled deep as I, Mason Carter, eased the gearshift down, coaxing my 18-wheeler Freightliner through a winding descent in the Oregon mountains. My hands, callous from a decade hauling loads, gripped the wheel firm, though my fingers tightened a touch. Behind me, 70,000 pounds of metal and freight pressed hard, challenging the brakes on every twist. "Hold tight, sweetheart," I murmured to the truck I'd christened Mabel after my old aunt. "Nice and slow." The CB radio hissed to life. "Westbound at mile marker 142, heads up. Wreck's gone, but the road's still greasy." "Over." I grabbed the mic. "Thanks, Roadrunner." "Coming down easy as she goes." "Over." Then it hit. My brake pedal went mushy under my boot, dropping too easy, too fast. The pressure gauge plummeted. "Come on, not now," I muttered, pumping the pedal as my training surged to the front. The truck gained speed, momentum building like a runaway train. The escape ramp was a good half-mile off. I flipped on the Jake brake, triggered the emergency systems, and wrestled to keep the trailer from fishtailing as we roared down the slope at nearly 75 miles per hour. A sharp curve loomed, the guardrail barely hiding a 1,500-foot plunge. My Army days kicked in. I stopped thinking, just acted. I slammed the gears down, the engine howling in defiance. I yanked the wheel toward the runaway ramp, a steep gravel slope built to stop trucks like mine. The Freightliner hit it at 60, the jolt slamming me against the seatbelt, stealing my breath. Gravel sprayed like a storm, the rig grinding slower until it shuddered to a stop, nose buried 2 feet in rock. I sat frozen, pulse pounding, tasting copper where I'd bit my lip. 20 years on the road, and I knew this wasn't just a fluke. Someone wanted me dead. 3 weeks later, I rolled my patched-up rig into the driveway of our tidy split-level house in Willow Creek, Nebraska. With its new green shutters and manicured lawn, the place was everything I'd scraped together for a real home with my wife, Kaylee. I'd paid $325,000 cash for it, no mortgage, wiping out most of my savings. But the smile on Kaylee's face when I handed her the keys? Worth every penny. Climbing out of the cab, duffel over my shoulder, I stopped short. The blinds were shut tight despite the sunny afternoon. Kaylee's silver Toyota sat in the drive, but the house felt off. "Kaylee, I'm back," I called, nudging the front door open. The air carried a thick, spicy cologne, not Kaylee's usual light scent. I dropped my bag by the door and stepped into the living room, spotting 2 whiskey glasses in the sink, one smudged with dark burgundy lipstick. Kaylee always wore peach. "Mason?" Her voice drifted from upstairs, followed by quick steps and the snap of a drawer shutting. "You're back early." She appeared at the stairwell, dark hair tied in a loose knot, dressed in leggings and a baggy sweatshirt. "Got a fast unload in Kansas City," I said, watching her closely. "Everything all right?" "Sure thing," she said, coming down with open arms for a hug that felt stiff, like a formality. "Just messing with some art projects. Place is a wreck, would have tidied if I knew you were coming." I held her, noticing how she kept a slight gap between us. "Missed you," I said low. "Missed you too," she answered, pulling back fast. "Hungry? I can whip something up." "Think I'll hit the shower first," I said, nodding toward the kitchen. "Had company while I was gone?" Her smile twitched, just for a second. "Oh, Tara from my art class stopped by yesterday. We were brainstorming some sketching ideas." I nodded, knowing Tara always smelled of lavender, not that heavy cologne lingering in the air. I'd met all of Kaylee's so-called art friends and funded the fancy paint supplies collecting dust in the guest room. In the bathroom, I stood under the hot water, letting the road's dirt and stress swirl down the drain. My mind replayed the truck incident, the mechanic's grim look as he showed me the cleanly sliced brake lines. "Someone meant business, man," he'd said. I hadn't told Kaylee, only my cousin Wade. Now I wondered if that was a mistake. After the shower, I checked the bedroom methodically. Nothing stood out until I reached into the nightstand for my half-read thriller. Tucked behind it was a receipt, $1,800 withdrawn from our joint account 4 days ago. I slipped it back exactly as found and kept looking. Under Kaylee's gym clothes in the laundry basket, I found a small boutique bag with black lace lingerie, tag still on, a $350 set from some high-end brand, way more than Kaylee would spend, especially when she was supposedly saving for new art supplies. My phone pinged with a text from Wade, brake line analysis, clean slice, pro-grade cutter. "Be careful, brother." I deleted it quickly and headed downstairs, where Kaylee was fussing with takeout menus on the counter. Mexican or burgers, she asked, too chipper. Either works, I said, keeping my voice even. Tell me about these art projects you've been working on. She dove into a long spiel about color theory and canvas prep, words she'd clearly rehearsed but didn't quite own. I nodded, tossing in a question here and there, noting how she dodged details about what she was actually drawing. Sounds cool, I said when she finally trailed off. Can I see some of your recent sketches? Maybe pick a few to frame? Her eyes flicked wide for a split second. They're not done yet, she said fast. Need more work. Plus, I accidentally trashed my sketchbook last week, lost it all. I was gutted. I nodded, playing along. That's a tough one, I said, leaning back in my chair. You should try that backup drive I got you. Kaylee fidgeted with her wedding band, her fingers twisting it nervously. Yeah, I know. My bad. I'll start over next week. I can pitch in, I offered, keeping my tone light. Taking some time off after that break scare in Oregon. Her hand stilled on the takeout menu, her eyes flicking up. Break scare? You didn't say anything about that. I watched her closely. Didn't want to stress you out. Nearly bought it if not for the escape ramp. Mechanic says someone cut the lines. Her face went pale, lips parting slightly. That's awful. Who'd do something like that? Cops are on it, I said, holding her gaze steady. Insurance guy's coming by Monday. That was a bluff, she wouldn't know. Her throat bobbed as she turned back to the menus, hands trembling just a bit. Let's go with Mexican, she said, voice too bright. Feeling something with a kick. I gave her a smile that didn't touch my eyes. Works for me. I like a little heat too. The next morning, I was up before the sun, a holdover from my army days that years of hauling freight couldn't shake. Kaylee was still in bed, turned away from me. We hadn't been intimate, she'd blamed a headache, a line I'd heard more than I liked lately. I slipped out of bed quietly, pulled on my clothes in the dark, and grabbed my keys before heading to the truck. The early Nebraska air was crisp, heavy with spring dew as I fired up the Freightliner's engine, letting it hum while I got to work. From a locked box under the driver's seat, I pulled out a small case with 4 GPS trackers, each no bigger than a matchbook. My time in military intelligence before trucking taught me things most folks never learn, like how to keep tabs on someone. In under 10 minutes, I had one tracker tucked inside the rear bumper of Kaylee's Toyota, hidden where no routine wash would find it. Another went into her purse, slipped into a side pocket she never checked. Then I set up motion-activated cameras, one in the living room, disguised as a wall plug by the couch, another in the bedroom, built into the clock radio. Finally, I stuck a tiny voice recorder under the kitchen table where we did most of our talking. By the time Kaylee came downstairs at 8, I was kicking back with the morning paper and a fresh pot of coffee. Morning, darlin', I said, sliding a mug her way. Sleep well? She mumbled, grabbing the coffee and diving into her phone with a focus that wasn't usual. After a beat, she said, I've got an art workshop in Omaha today. Might be out late. No problem, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll be here. Thinking I'll take Rusty for a hike, then tinker with some house stuff. Rusty, our border collie mix, lifted his head at his name, tail smacking the floor. Kaylee had wanted a dog, but I was the one who trained him, fed him, took him out running. Good, she said, eyes still on her phone. He could use the stretch. I watched her rush through her morning, putting on makeup with more care than a workshop called for and picking an outfit that hugged her curves a little too well for a day of sketching. Have a blast at your workshop, I said as she headed out. Pick up something new. Always do, she shot back with a quick smile, avoiding my eyes. The second her car peeled out, I flipped open my laptop and pulled up the GPS tracking app. The dot for Kaylee's Toyota wasn't heading toward Omaha, it was moving south, straight for Sioux City, Iowa. Funny place for a workshop, I muttered to Rusty, who whined softly, like he sensed something was off. I scratched his ears. Don't worry, bud. We're gonna get to the bottom of this. 4 hours later, I was in the parking lot of the Grandview Hotel in Sioux City, ball cap pulled low over my eyes. Kaylee stepped out of the hotel's glass doors, a tall guy in a sharp suit beside her, graying hair, cocky walk, his hand resting on her lower back like he owned her. Through my binoculars, I caught them laughing, him leaning in to murmur something that made her laugh in a way I hadn't seen in forever. He opened the door of a glossy silver BMW for her, then slid into the driver's seat. I snapped a few pictures with my telephoto lens, getting clear shots of their faces. Back in my rented pickup, I ran the BMW's plates through an old military contacts database. The car was registered to Summit Ventures LLC. A quick search pulled up Dr. Victor Crane, life coach and motivational speaker, founder of Rise to Greatness seminars. His website screamed money, high-priced elite retreats and success blueprints promising to unlock your inner millionaire. Digging deeper, I found Better Business Bureau complaints, hushed-up fraud settlements, and whispers of him getting too close with female clients. So that's the guy, I said under my breath, staring at a slick photo of Crane on stage, arms wide like some kind of savior, grinning at a crowd eating out of his hand. I checked the GPS tracker again. Kaylee and this Victor Crane guy were at a fancy restaurant in downtown Sioux City. For a moment, I thought about storming in, confronting them right there over their overpriced wine. But I held back. A lunch date wasn't enough, I needed the whole picture, the full weight of whatever she was hiding. Driving back to Willow Creek, my mind churned. Was this just her stepping out, or was it tied to the brake line sabotage? The timing felt too neat, too convenient. By the time Kaylee got home that evening, I'd made up my mind, I wasn't the prey here. I'd be the one tracking. How'd the workshop go? I asked, keeping my voice easy as she dropped her purse on the counter. Tiring, but it lit a fire under me, she said, the lice sliding out smooth as silk. Can't wait to see what you come up with, I said, flashing a grin. That night, while Kaylee slept, I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts mapping out the next steps. The trust was gone, cut clean like my truck's brake lines. But I wasn't ready to call her out, not yet. I'd follow this trail wherever it led. Rusty lay sprawled on the floor by my side of the bed, snoring softly. An idea sparked as I glanced at his collar. You're gonna help me out, boy, I whispered. She barely notices you anyway. The next morning, after Kaylee headed out for what she called a coffee meetup with art clients, I drove to Wade's garage. His shop, a repurposed barn on the edge of town, handled custom jobs and high-end cars. Wade Carter, a couple years older and built like the wrestler he used to be, wiped oil off his hands as I rolled in. We shared the same sharp green eyes and stubborn jaw, family markers that ran deep. He led me to a cramped office in the back, shutting the door. The walls were plastered with engine schematics and old photos, some of us from our army days. So, it's her? Wade asked, his voice low, anger simmering under the surface. Not sure yet, I said, dropping into a rickety chair. She's tangled up with some slick-talking fraud named Victor Crane. Runs these self-help scams, preys on women looking for answers. Gotta figure out if it's just her cheating or if they're behind the brake job. Wade swore quietly. That cut on your brake line? Done with a high-end hydraulic tool. Clean work, not amateur. No way your average wife pulls that off without help. Exactly, I said, my jaw tight. I need those dash cams installed today, front, back, and one inside the cab. I want eyes on whoever gets near my rig when I'm not there. Already got the system, Wade said. Top-notch, cloud-based, tamper-proof. He paused, eyeing me. What's your plan, Mason? If they try to take you out, then I'll make sure they answer for it, I finished, my voice cold. Through the courts if I can. Wade nodded, reading the steel in my tone. Got something else, he said, pulling a small gadget from a drawer. Plugs into your truck's diagnostics. Catches any tampering, brakes, fuel lines, you name it. Pings your phone right away. Perfect, I said. One more thing, got any cameras small enough for a dog collar? That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, fitting a tiny camera to Rusty's collar. The thing was no bigger than a dime, streaming straight to my secure cloud account. You're my lookout when I'm gone, bud, I murmured, ruffling his fur. He licked my hand, tail thumping. The front door swung open, and I quickly fastened the collar, activating the camera with a quick tap. Hey! Kaylee called, dropping shopping bags in the hall. Grab dinner from that Mexican joint you love. Busy day? I asked, helping with the bags. Just errands, she said, vague as ever. Oh, big news, though, those art clients? They want me for a huge project next month. Corporate portraits, event sketches, the works. I nodded, acting impressed. Nice. Good payout? Real good, she said, her enthusiasm a little too rehearsed. They're wiring $4,500 tomorrow as a deposit. That's big time, I said, watching Rusty pad over to her, the camera catching every move. Those clients must think you're the real deal. Later that night, while I was in the shower, I pulled up the footage from Rusty's collar cam. He'd followed Kaylee into the spare room, curling up by her feet. She was on the phone, voice low. "It's me," she said. "He bought the client story, no problem." A pause. "Yeah, it covers the money hitting the account. He doesn't suspect a thing. The seminar's next weekend, he's been hovering since the truck thing, but I'll figure it out. Miss you too." I watched the clip 3 times, each word hitting like a punch. The woman on my screen wasn't my wife, she was a stranger wearing her face. Over breakfast the next morning, I dropped a plan. "Got a quick haul to Des Moines," I said. 3 days, decent money. Back by Friday night. Kaylee's relief was obvious, her shoulders relaxing. "Sounds good," she said, already thumbing her phone. "I've got plenty to do with this new client." The moment I pulled out in my rig, she was on the phone. Rusty's camera caught her pacing, voice excited. "He's gone till Friday. Told you I'd make it work. The seminar's all set, I used his card, but he never checks the statements, $2,800 for the Leadership Summit package. I know it's steep, but your program's changed everything for me, Victor. I love you too." Instead of heading to Des Moines, I stashed my truck at a secure lot outside town and doubled back in a plain rental car. I set up in an empty house across the street, one my folks left me years ago. Within an hour, a silver BMW rolled into our driveway. Victor Crane stepped out, all casual in designer cargo pants and a fitted jacket. Through my high-powered lens, I snapped shots of them hugging in the driveway, walking into my house together. Later, policy. "We've got a situation here," I muttered to Rusty, who tilted his head like he understood. The bedroom curtains were half open, and I caught a glimpse of them inside, too close for my liking. Rusty's collar camera caught every word they spoke inside. Victor Crane was all compliments about the house, asking about insurance policies while lounging in my favorite recliner, sipping bourbon. Kaylee laughed, saying how I busted my tail to give her everything. "The life insurance, you're still the only beneficiary?" Victor asked, swirling his glass. $1.2 million, Kaylee said, her voice casual. "Double payout if it's an accident, plus the truck policy, this house, fully paid, and his retirement accounts. Close to $3.5 million, all in." "And he's still in the dark about the Oregon thing?" Victor pressed. "He knows someone messed with the brakes," she said. "Thinks it's some pissed-off driver or a rival trucker. He's got no clue." "We gotta play this slow," Victor warned. Oregon was too quick. "I need a rock-solid alibi before we try again. The seminar sign-up's a good cover, shows you're just a dedicated client, nothing personal." "I've got it handled," Kaylee said, all confidence. "Those pills you gave me? I've been slipping them in his coffee before his long hauls. Sooner or later, he'll nod off behind the wheel. Trucking wrecks happen every day. No one's gonna dig deeper." My stomach turned to ice as I listened to them plot my end like it was nothing. That morning's coffee, I'd poured it down the sink after catching a weird, bitter taste. For 3 days, I kept watch, logging every move. Victor stayed over twice, sneaking out only when a delivery or neighbor was due. They used my home gym, drank my bourbon, slept in my bed, all caught on Rusty's camera. I saw them planning their future after my tragic accident, trips to Italy, fancy cars, the works. The heartbroken widow finds solace with her life coach, Victor chuckled, kissing her neck. A romance born from loss. "You're awful," Kaylee giggled, leaning into him. Thursday evening, I called to say I'd be late, Saturday instead of Friday. Kaylee's disappointment sounded real enough, but Rusty's footage that night told a different story. "He's stuck till Saturday," she told Victor over the phone, her voice practically buzzing. "Come over tonight, we've got more time." Then I made a call of my own to Elise Harper, a former DA turned private investigator. Years back, I'd helped Elise get out from under a controlling ex, driving her across 2 states and slipping her enough cash to start fresh when no one else would step up. Now I needed her skills. "I need your help," I told her straight. "Legal advice and someone who can build a case that holds up." Elise showed up at my surveillance spot Friday morning. At 36, she moved with the sharp focus of someone who'd faced down high-stakes cases. Her auburn hair was tied back tight, her face bare of makeup, all business. We sat at a card table littered with photos, transcripts, and legal papers. I played the key clips from Rusty's collar cam and the hidden house mics, watching her jaw tighten. "This is straight-up conspiracy to commit murder," she said, her voice clipped. "The Oregon brake tampering's attempted murder. The drugging adds more charges. I want them crushed," I said low. "Not just locked up, I want their lives in ruins, money, reputation, everything." Elise nodded, her eyes sharp. "I get it, Mason, and I can help make it happen, but we've got to do this clean. One misstep, like an illegal recording in a two-party consent state, and they could walk." "That's why you're here," I said. "I need this ironclad, no loopholes." "First, we file for emergency divorce proceedings, citing endangerment," Elise said, firing up her laptop. "Next, we move to freeze all joint accounts while the investigation runs. Then we tip off the insurance companies about the fraud. And Crane, his seminars cross state lines. That's wire fraud, maybe interstate conspiracy. We can pull in federal charges." She typed fast, then looked up. "But we need something bulletproof." I stared at the photos, my mind spinning. "They want me dead in a truck crash," I said slowly. "Let's give them one." Over the next 24 hours, the plan took shape. Through Wade's contacts, we found a wrecked Freightliner that matched my rig, same color, close enough model. With some staged damage in a strategic spot on a quiet stretch of Highway 19 outside Willow Creek, it'd look like a deadly wreck. Elise looped in the local sheriff's department, calling it a fraud investigation sting. The sheriff, an old buddy from high school, didn't need much convincing after seeing the evidence. Saturday night, with sleet glazing the roads, we were ready. I called Kaylee one last time. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, faking a tired drawl. "Running late. Roads are a mess. Might not be back till morning." "Don't push it," she said, her concern so polished I almost bought it. "I miss you," I said, testing her. "Miss you too," she replied, smooth as ever. "Be safe." I hung up and nodded to Sheriff Dalton. "You sure?" he asked, his weathered face serious. "Once we do this, no turning back." "They've already tried to kill me twice," I said, my voice hard. "Let's finish this before they get it right." At 11:43 p.m., Willow Creek's emergency dispatch got calls about a tractor-trailer crash on Highway 19, just past the town line. Sheriff Dalton responded himself, reporting a truck matching Mason Carter's had skidded off the road and down a ravine, bursting into flames. The fire was too hot, the conditions too dicey for recovery till morning. By midnight, word had spread through the town's emergency network. By 1 a.m., as planned, a deputy knocked on my door to tell Kaylee Carter her husband was gone in a tragic accident. Through my binoculars, I watched her open the door in her robe, her face collapsing into perfect, practiced grief. The deputy delivered his condolences, explaining that the body's condition would delay formal identification. As soon as his cruiser rolled out of sight, Kaylee shut the door and leaned against it, her hands shaky, not with sorrow, but with a kind of wired excitement. She yanked out her phone and whispered, "It's done. Truck crash, exactly like we wanted." 3 days later, Kaylee Carter, dressed in a sharp black dress, sat in front of TV cameras, dabbing her eyes. "Mason was my everything," she told the reporter, voice catching just right. "All he ever did was work to build our future. Now I've got to figure out how to keep going without him." Victor Crane sat beside her, introduced as Dr. Crane, her grief counselor. His hand rested on her shoulder, all professional sympathy, but I could see the smug glint in his eyes. "Kaylee's showing incredible strength," he said to the camera. "In my Healing Through Loss workshops, I teach that grief's a road you don't walk alone. I'm here to guide her through this." I watched the whole act from Elise's office, my hair dyed darker, a fake beard and glasses changing my face just enough. The handful of people who knew I was still breathing were sworn to silence. "Real heartwarming," Elise said, her voice dry as she jotted notes during the interview. "How long till they go for the insurance money?" "Already did," I said. 3 policies, just over $2.5 million, plus the house and my savings, everything we built. "Good," Elise said, her smile sharp. "I've filed the emergency petitions. Fraud investigators are in the loop. Now we let them dig their own hole deeper." The next day, Kaylee and Victor showed up at my memorial service, a small, quiet affair she'd insisted on keeping low-key. From a distance, I watched her play the grieving widow, accepting hugs from a few locals who'd bothered to come. Most of my trucking buddies were out on runs, none the wiser about my death. Rusty sat beside me in the car, trained over the past week to stay quiet on cue. His collar camera kept rolling as I took in the sham of my own funeral. Not much of a goodbye, huh, boy? I muttered, rubbing his ears. Guess she's itching to start spending my cash. After the service, I tailed Kaylee and Victor to a ritzy restaurant 40 miles outside Willow Creek, far enough to avoid familiar faces. Using the camera and directional mic Elise had given me, I recorded their celebratory lunch. To new starts, Victor said, lifting his glass. And to Mason, who made it all happen, Kaylee said with a laugh that grated after her crocodile tears at the memorial. 1 week of playing the sad widow, then I'm thinking the Bahamas. I need to heal somewhere with beaches and blue water. Insurance should clear in a month, Victor said. You've been perfect, darling. Took that theater class in college, Kaylee said, smirking. Knew it'd pay off someday. I caught every word, every glance. When they left, I headed back to Elise's office to add the footage to our growing file. We've got them on conspiracy, wire fraud, insurance fraud, Elise said, reviewing the clips. But I want a slam dunk. Prosecutors need airtight proof of intent to kill for the money, or these cases can crumble. What's it gonna take? I asked. A clear admission the brake tampering was deliberate, aimed at killing you for the payout, she said, tapping her pen. Something undeniable. I leaned back, thinking. I've got an idea to make that happen. A week after my death, Kaylee got a letter, crafted by Elise and sent through a cooperating insurance investigator, saying the main life insurance policy was approved, with funds transferring in 48 hours. That night, Rusty's collar cam caught Kaylee and Victor celebrating in my living room. $2.5 million. Kaylee hooped, twirling around the coffee table. We're set. You're set, Victor said, pulling her onto his lap. I'm just your humble life coach, helping you through your loss. When's my cut coming? He asked, kissing her neck. 50-50, like we said. Once it clears, we'll funnel your share through the seminar payments, same as planned, she said. Victor topped off their drinks. You were slick with those break lines, by the way. Where'd you learn to cut like that? You'd be surprised what you pick up online, Kaylee said, clinking her glass against his. Nearly got spotted, though, had to duck under the truck when the neighbor's kid came poking around for his soccer ball. Worth it, Victor said, kissing her again. Though my sleeping pill idea was smoother. Too risky, Kaylee said, climbing onto his lap. Needed it to look real. No toxicology worries when the wreck's too bad to ID the body. To Mason, Victor said, raising his glass with a smirk. The guy who never saw it coming. Later, after Victor left, Kaylee made another call, not to him but to someone labeled Milwaukee in her phone. Rusty's Kim picked up her voice, sharp and businesslike, nothing like the flirty tone she used with Victor. Phase 1's done, she said. Insurance is approved. Victor still thinks we're splitting it even. No, he doesn't know about our deal. Once the money's in, we move forward as planned. 3 months, we're in the clear. I'll take care of Victor when it's time. Kaylee hung up the phone, a sharp, calculating smirk curling her lips, one that said Victor Crane wasn't the genius he thought he was, just another piece in her bigger puzzle. The next morning, she strolled into Willow Creek Savings and Trust to talk about the incoming insurance money. The bank manager, already clued in by the feds, played his part, all somber nods while a hidden recorder caught every word. $2.5 million a big sum, Mrs. Carter, he said. Got any plans for managing it? Kaylee's eyes dropped, the picture of grief. I'm thinking of investing in some personal growth programs, helping folks deal with loss like mine. Dr. Crane's workshops have been my anchor through all this. The manager gave a sympathetic nod. We can arrange transfers to Dr. Crane's business accounts if that helps. That'd be great, Kaylee said, her face brightening just a touch. As she walked out, she didn't spot the plain gray van across the street where Elise and I were listening to the whole exchange live. Nailed it, Elise said. The bank recording locks in the financial fraud. Pair that with her brake tampering confession from last night, and we're building a case they can't wiggle out of. What about this Milwaukee guy? I asked. Sounds like Kaylee's playing Victor, too. Elise nodded. I've got a guy tracing those calls. Could be another player we haven't pinned down yet. That evening, Victor showed up at the house. Rusty's collar Kim caught them at the dining table, hunched over a laptop, going over offshore account details. Once the money hits your account, we wire half to the shell company in Belize, Victor said, pointing at the screen. It bounces through 2 more entities before landing in our private accounts in the Bahamas. Kaylee frowned. All this? Can't I just cut you a check for your consulting? Victor chuckled, like she was a kid asking a dumb question. Sweetheart, that's how you get caught. Big payments to a guy you barely knew before your husband's gone? That screams red flags. This way, it looks like a clean business deal. You've got it all figured out, Kaylee said, leaning in for a kiss. That's why we're unstoppable together. Once things settle, Victor went on, we stay apart in public for 6 months. You need to be seen with other guys, nothing heavy, just enough to show we weren't a thing before the crash. 6 months? Kaylee pouted. Can't we sneak around? Too dicey, Victor said. Insurance investigators eat that stuff up. But after 6 months, you start showing up at my elite retreats, and our romance can bloom naturally. From my spot across the street, I watched their scheming, my gut twisting. I'm done watching, I told Elise. She gave a grim nod. Bank says the payout hits her account tomorrow morning. The second they try to move that money, we drop the hammer. The next day was clear and sunny. At 9:12 a.m., Kaylee got the alert that the insurance cash had landed. Within minutes, she was on the phone with Victor. It's in, she said, voice electric. 2.5 million. I'm starting the transfers now. Perfect, Victor said. Meet me for lunch to celebrate, 1 o'clock at the Grandview. I'll be there, Kaylee said, wearing something nice. After hanging up, she opened her laptop and started moving money, not to Victor's Belize setup, but to an account labeled CR Land Holdings. She split the 2.5 million into 3 quick transfers. When she was done, she called Milwaukee again. Money's moved as we planned, she said, all business. Crane's clueless. Yeah, I'm meeting him for lunch to keep up the act. The Costa Rica property's locked in by tonight. No, nothing's traceable. I'll deal with Crane for good after lunch. In her purse, tucked next to her lipstick and keys, was a small vial of clear liquid and a pair of thin rubber gloves. From Elisa's office, me and the team of investigators sat in stunned silence, watching her double-cross unfold. She's playing everybody, I said, my voice low. Victor thinks they're in it together, but she's setting him up to take the fall. Elise nodded. She's planning to take him out today. We've got to move now. As Kaylee headed out for her lunch date, a team of FBI agents, brought in by Elise for interstate crimes, got into position. Meanwhile, Sheriff Dalton and I rolled up to the Grandview restaurant, a swanky spot with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Missouri River. Victor was already there, camped out at a corner table, a bottle of champagne chilling beside him. He checked his watch, looking annoyed. Kaylee was running 15 minutes late, not like her, especially on a day like this. His phone buzzed with a text, running behind. Order my usual. He grinned, waving the waiter over for his standard old-fashioned. Everything was falling into place. By tomorrow, his cut of my insurance money would be safe in offshore accounts, and in 6 months, he'd have the cash in Kaylee. It was a con he'd pulled off twice before: find a restless wife, charm her with dreams of riches and romance, get rid of the husband, split the payout. Clean, profitable, and with the right moves, nearly foolproof. His drink hit the table just as the feds walked through the restaurant's front doors. Victor didn't clock the agents right away. Dr. Victor Crane, the female agent asked, her tone making it clear she already knew the answer. Yes, Victor said, flashing his polished grin. How can I assist you? You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and insurance fraud, she said, flat and cold. Stand slowly, hands behind your back. Victor let out a shaky laugh, glancing around. This has to be a mix-up. I'm a life coach, not some crook. No mix-up, Dr. Crane, a voice cut in from behind, my voice, one he shouldn't have heard. Not feeling too inspired right now, though. He turned, face going white as Mason Carter, stepped into view, very much alive, Sheriff Dalton at my side. You're, Victor stammered, words failing him. Alive? Yeah, sorry to spoil your day, I said, my voice like ice as the agents cuffed him. I leaned in close. Kaylee's not coming to lunch. She had other plans, ones that didn't include you making it to dessert. His eyes widened, confusion plain. What are you talking about? She played you, Doc, I said. Just like you played those other women. Only difference? She was planning to keep every dime and cut you out for good. As the agents let him off, reading his rights, I felt nothing but a hollow ache where my life with Kaylee used to be. Across town, Kaylee pulled into the lot at Willow Creek Savings and Trust, checking her lipstick in the rearview. The vial of poison sat in her purse, ready for Victor's old-fashioned at lunch. She'd let him think they were partners till the last second, then tie up her final loose end. The Costa Rica property, bought through a ghost company, was waiting. New ID papers were ready. By tomorrow, Kaylee Carter would be gone, replaced by Sophia Mendez, rich widow and land investor. As she stepped out of her car, a black SUV rolled up, and a woman in a sharp suit got out. Mrs. Carter, she said, flashing an FBI badge. Special Agent Laura Bennett. We need to talk about fraudulent insurance claims filed in your name. Kaylee's mask slipped, just a flicker. There's been a mistake. My husband died in a horrible crash. The claims are legit. Are they? I said, stepping out from behind the SUV. Her face froze, then twisted in disbelief as she turned to see me. For a moment, she just stared, mouth moving like a fish out of water. You're alive, she finally choked out. How? Sorry to mess up your getaway, I said, my voice low. Disappointed? Her shock flipped to calculation, tears welling up as she shifted gears. Mason, oh my God, it's a miracle. She moved to hug me, but agents stepped in her way. Drop the act, Kaylee, I said, tired. We've got it all, the brake tampering in Oregon, the pills in my coffee, the insurance scam, your plans for Victor, even your buddy in Milwaukee. Her face went stone cold, the fake tears gone. You can't prove a thing. I held up my phone, playing her own voice. Those pills you gave me? I've been slipping them in his coffee before his long hauls. He'll crash eventually. Rusty's been a hell of a partner, I said, nodding to the dog in the SUV's back seat, his collar cam still on. Man's best friend, right? As the agents cuffed her, reading her rights, she shot me a look pure venom. You think this is over? I've got people you don't know about. Like your Milwaukee pal? I said. Thomas Reed, career conman, real estate scammer. Feds picked him up an hour ago with all your Costa Rica paperwork. Fear cracked her composure for the first time. As they led her to the SUV, she threw me one last glance, hate mixed with a grudging nod, like she almost respected the play. The arrests of Kaylee Carter, Victor Crane, and Thomas Reed hit the Midwest news like a bomb, a wild tale of murder for insurance, double crosses, and a husband who faked his death to bring it all down. I watched the coverage from Elisa's office, Rusty sprawled at my feet. His collar cam, a star witness, was in evidence with hours of footage and bank records. Prosecutors offering Crane a deal, Elise said, hanging up her phone. 12 years if he testifies against Kaylee on the brake tampering. Says he never meant to kill you, just wanted to spook you into a divorce so she'd get half your stuff. And Kaylee? I asked. Not saying a word, not to the DA, not to her lawyer, Elise said. But with what we've got, she's staring at 25 to life. The attempted murder alone's 15 years. I nodded. The money? She moved the full $2.5 million before we grabbed her, Elise said. It's frozen. Bank's cooperating, and the feds have court orders to reverse the transfers. It'll take a bit, but you'll get it all back. Don't want it, I said, the words coming out fast. The insurance cash, give it to that women's shelter you work with. I don't want a cent tied to this mess. Elise looked at me, thoughtful. That's big of you, Mason. What's next for you? I glanced out the window at my rig, the real one, not the torch decoy. Back to the road. It's where I fit. It's what I know. You could stay in Willow Creek, she said. Folks look up to you even more now. The diner's got a Carter comeback burger on the menu. I laughed, a real one for the first time in a while. Tempting, but nah. Too many shadows here. Rusty whined softly, nudging my leg like he got it. At least you've got a loyal sidekick, Elise said. Damn right, I said, scratching his ears. He's riding shotgun from now on. A dog like this belongs on the highway. 6 months later, the Willow Creek courthouse hummed with tension as Kaylee Carter's trial against the state of Nebraska kicked off. The old Willow Creek courthouse was packed with reporters, cameras flashing like vultures circling. I sat in the back row, barely recognizable with my beard trimmed tight and hair cropped short again. Elise Harper, now part of the prosecution team, leaned over. "Are you holding up for this?" she whispered as the bailiff called everyone to stand. I gave a tight nod. "Been ready for 6 months." Judge Evelyn Ramsey walked in, a no-nonsense woman with 25 years on the bench, known for keeping things tight and fair. After some procedural stuff, the prosecutor, District Attorney Paul Whitaker, stepped up for his opening. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady and deep, filling the room. "This case is about betrayal at its core, betrayal of a marriage, of trust, and, most gravely, of the basic human rule not to kill for profit." He paced, locking eyes with each juror. "The evidence will prove that the defendant, Kaylee Carter, carefully plotted to murder her husband, Mason, for insurance money. She sabotaged his truck's brakes, spiked his coffee with sedatives, and when those failed, schemed with her lover to fake a fatal crash. At the defense table, Kaylee sat looking like a wounded angel in a gray blazer, her dark hair in a simple braid, her face a mix of hurt and bewilderment. What makes this case remarkable," Whitaker went on, "is that Mason Carter survived. Instead of confronting her, he chose to expose her conspiracy, gathering evidence so clear it'll leave no question of her guilt." The defense lawyer, Gregory Holt, a sharp-dressed guy with a smug grin, took his turn with a swagger. "The prosecution spun a wild tale," he said, nodding to the jury. "Secret cameras, staged deaths, it's straight out of a thriller flick. But this is a courtroom, where facts matter, not drama." He pointed to Kaylee, who dropped her gaze just right. "My client's a loyal wife, betrayed twice, first by her husband's elaborate setup, now by this vicious prosecution. The evidence will show Mason Carter, strapped for cash after his trucking business tanked, framed his wife to dodge financial ruin." I tensed at the lie, but Elise's hand on my arm kept me steady. "Let him bury himself," she muttered. He went on, claiming the state's evidence, recordings, surveillance, Victor Crane's testimony, was shaky, obtained without consent or coerced from a conman looking to save his own skin. As the openings wrapped, I leaned toward Elise. "That's all they've got?" "It's their only shot," she said quietly. "So doubt by making you the bad guy. But the evidence doesn't bend." Over the next 7 days, the prosecution laid it out piece by piece. Wade Carter took the stand, showing photos and mechanical reports proving the brake lines were cut deliberately. Insurance agents testified about the policies and claims Kaylee filed after my death. Bank officials detailed her rush transfers of the payout. On day 4, Victor Crane testified as part of his plea deal. "Mr. Crane," Whitaker started, "how did you first get involved with Kaylee Carter?" Victor cleared his throat. "She came to my seminar in Sioux City last February, posing as a well-off artist wanting to fund my programs." "When did it turn romantic?" "Pretty much right away," Victor admitted. "She was upfront about what she wanted." "When did she bring up her husband?" "A couple weeks in," Victor said, shifting in his seat. "Called him controlling, said he kept her stuck in a small town, held all the money. Made it sound like she was caged." "And when did talk turn to getting rid of Mason permanently?" Victor glanced at Kaylee, who stared back, cold as stone. "It built up slow. She started with divorce, said he'd never give her a fair split. Then she mentioned his life insurance. One night, she said truckers crash all the time." "Objection." Holt jumped up. "Speculation." "Sustained," Judge Ramsey ruled. "Rephrase, Mr. Whitaker. What exactly did Kaylee ask you to do about her husband?" Victor swallowed. "She asked if I knew someone who could mess with his truck before a haul. Said she'd pay well. When I didn't bite, she said she could handle it but needed tips to make it look like an accident." "Did you give her those tips?" "Yeah," Victor said, looking down. "Told her about hydraulic cutters for clean brake line cuts, to mimic wear and tear." "How did Kaylee react when Mason survived the Oregon incident?" "She was pissed," Victor said. "Said he had the luck of the devil and we needed a surer plan. That's when she started looking into sedatives that wouldn't show up in standard tests." Holt's cross-examination came hard, painting Victor as the puppet master who roped in a gullible Kaylee. Victor stuck to his story, but looked rattled by the end. On day 5, the prosecution dropped the hammer, Rusty's collar cam footage. The courtroom went dead quiet as the screen showed Kaylee and Victor plotting my death, joking about the insurance money and their big plans. A love story born from tragedy, Victor's voice smirked. You're awful, Kaylee laughed. Then came the recordings of her calls with Thomas Reed in Milwaukee, scheming to double-cross Victor and disappear with the cash. The courtroom buzzed during a break when Gregory Holt, Kaylee's lawyer, sidled up to the prosecution table with a plea offer. Involuntary manslaughter, 5 years, he said low. My client will cop to the conspiracy but swears she never meant to kill anyone. Paul Whitaker glanced at me, and I shook my head hard. No deal, Whitaker said. We're solid on this. On day 6, the room went quiet as they called me to the stand. A ripple went through the crowd as I, Mason Carter, walked up and swore in. Mr. Carter, Whitaker started, tell us about your marriage to the defendant. I kept my voice even, laying out how I met Kaylee on a delivery run in Kansas, our fast romance, getting hitched 3 months later. I talked about buying our house in Willow Creek, backing her art dreams, grinding out weeks on the road to secure our future. When did you start noticing something off? Whitaker asked. I ran through it, the odd bank withdrawals, receipts that didn't add up, Kaylee pulling away. Then the Oregon brake failure, and Wade finding the clean cuts on the lines. Why not call her out right then? I couldn't wrap my head around her wanting me dead, I said plain. We'd built something real, or so I thought. I had to know why. So you gathered evidence instead of confronting her? Yeah, I said. If I went at her with nothing solid, she'd just deny it all. When Holt got a shot, he came at me like a pit bull. Mr. Carter, your whole case hinges on secret recordings you made without your wife's consent, right? The recordings were legal, I said cool. Nebraska's a one-party consent state. That's not what I asked, Holt snapped. You spied on your wife for weeks, planting cameras in your own home without her knowing, true or false? I documented attempts to kill me, I shot back. You'd rather I waited till she pulled it off? He switched gears. Your trucking business was in trouble, wasn't it? Insurance folks digging into the Oregon crash found you were late on rig payments. Objection, Whitaker called. Relevance, and no evidence supports that. Goes to motive, Your Honor, Holt argued. The defense says Mr. Carter cooked this up for his own insurance payout. I'll allow it, Judge Ramsey ruled. Answer the question. I shook my head. My business was fine. I own my truck free and clear. One payment got delayed during a bank switch, cleared up in a week. Holt waved some bank statements. Yet you pulled out $22,000 in cash in the months before these so-called attempts. Where'd that go? Surveillance gear and Elise Harper's PI services, I said. She's got receipts for every dollar. For 2 hours, Holt poked and prodded, trying to trip me up or spin a different story. I kept my answers straight, calm, and true. Finally, he took a desperate swing. Mr. Carter, isn't it true you and Elise Harper have been romantically involved since splitting with Mrs. Carter? Objection. Whitaker barked. Irrelevant and inflammatory. Sustained, Ramsey said, her voice sharp. Mr. Holt, stick to the case. No further questions, Holt muttered, slinking back to the defense table where Kaylee sat, glaring daggers. As I stepped down, my eyes caught hers for a second. The innocent act was gone, her face was pure ice. That afternoon, the prosecution wrapped their case. The next morning, Kaylee pulled a wild card. She fired Holt and announced she'd represent herself. Your Honor, she said to Judge Ramsey, voice dripping with fake humility, Mr. Holt doesn't get my side of things. As a woman fighting these false charges, I'm the best one to tell my story. Ramsey eyed her, skeptical. Mrs. Carter, self-representation is rarely wise in a case this complex. Are you sure about this? Absolutely, Your Honor, Kaylee said, all confidence. I've got nothing to hide, and the jury deserves to hear from me directly. Ramsey allowed it, grudgingly, keeping Holt on as standby counsel. After lunch, Kaylee took the stand, dressed in a simple beige dress, hair plain, playing the part of a woman crushed by fate. Kaylee's performance on the stand was a masterclass, her voice cracking at just the right spots, eyes shimmering with tears she never quite let fall. I love my husband, she said, voice soft but clear. Everything I did was for our future. Yes, I went to Victor Crane's seminars, Mason knew about them. I was trying to build my art business to help out at home. She painted Victor as the villain, claiming he preyed on her loneliness, feeding her lies about me hiding money or stepping out on the road. He made me doubt my own husband, she said, voice trembling. I was lost, vulnerable. On the recordings, she insisted they were twisted or faked. Mason's good with tech, she told the jury, looking them dead in the eyes. He could edit anything to sound how he wanted. Imagine being married to someone who spies on you, records you, then fakes his own death to frame you. What kind of man does that? From the back row, I watched her work the room, my jaw tight. A few jurors looked like they were buying it, their faces softening. When Paul Whitaker stepped up for cross-examination, he moved carefully, knowing she'd won some sympathy. Mrs. Carter, you say the recordings were taken out of context. Let's hear this one again. He played the clip of her talking about the pills, those pills you gave me? I've been slipping them in his coffee before his long hauls. He'll crash eventually. How do we contextualize that? Whitaker asked, his tone sharp. Kaylee's eyes flashed cold for a split second before she dialed it back. I never put anything in his coffee. Victor and I were just talking, playing out some silly story, like we were in a crime novel or something. A story? Whitaker said, eyebrow raised. And the brake tampering in Oregon, was that a story too? I had nothing to do with that, she said, firm. If it even happened, it was probably Victor, setting me up to take the fall. And the $2.5 million you tried to transfer the second you thought your husband was dead, that's a story too? I was in shock, she said, voice catching. Victor told me it was for managing the estate. For 3 hours, Whitaker chipped away, pointing out how her story didn't line up with the evidence. She held it together, but cracks showed, little flares of anger, moments where her careful mask slipped. By the end, the jury's sympathy was fading, replaced by doubt. In her closing, Kaylee went straight for the heart, playing the misunderstood wife trapped by scheming men. It was good enough to make a couple jurors tear up. But Whitaker's closing brought it back to the facts. You've heard emotional pleas and wild alternate stories, he said, voice steady. But the truth is simple, Kaylee Carter tried to kill her husband for money. The state asks you to deliver justice, not just for Mason Carter, but for every promise that matters, every trust worth protecting, and the principle that a life isn't a payday. The courtroom went quiet. Judge Ramsey gave the jury their instructions. Nobody thought they'd decide fast on a case this tangled, but after just 4 hours, the bailiff announced a verdict. I sat stiff, Elise gripping my hand. Across the room, Kaylee stood at the defense table, chin high, defiant. Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict? Ramsey asked. The foreman, a gray-haired former librarian, stood. We have, Your Honor. The room held its breath as Ramsey reviewed the form, her face blank. The defendant will rise, she said. Kaylee stood, smoothing her dress, hands shaking just a bit. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, what is your verdict? Guilty, Your Honor. A murmur ran through the crowd. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree? Guilty, Your Honor. On the charge of insurance fraud? Guilty, Your Honor. With each word, Kaylee's polished front broke a little more. Ramsey thanked the jury and set sentencing for the next week. A week later, the courtroom was packed again as Ramsey prepared to deliver the sentence. Mrs. Carter, she said, her voice like steel, the evidence shows a cold, calculated disregard for human life that this court finds chilling. On all counts, you are sentenced to 25 years in prison, with parole possible after 18 years. The gavel hit hard, final. As Kaylee was let off in cuffs, she kept her head up, not once looking back at the life she'd torched. Later that day, Victor Crane got his sentence from his plea deal, 5 years, then deportation to Australia, barred from the U.S. for good. 3 weeks later, I pulled my new rig into a truck stop outside Casper, Wyoming. The diner's neon sign flickered, same as ever. I parked in the back lot, Rusty hopping down behind me. Inside, the place hummed with low chatter and the clink of forks. I slid into a window booth, Rusty curling up at my feet, quiet as trained. The waitress poured my coffee without a word. Just passing through, she asked. Always, I said. Heading west tomorrow. She nodded and moved on. I stared out at the highway lights, scratching Rusty's ears. That's enough for now, boy, I said. It was time to keep moving.